I'm wedding photographer and Canon explorer of light, Vanessa Joy. Here are my top 3 wedding photography lenses and why one of them might be upgraded. Now, I know so many of us are used to some staples in wedding photography, like the Canon RF 70-200mm f2.8L IS USM lens. Now, that lens is gorgeous, but to be honest, it's not one that I take with me for wedding photography, believe it or not. The lenses that I have here aren't even mostly prime lenses. And I know lenses like the 50mm 1.2L USM lens and the Canon RF 85mm f1.4L VSM lens. Those lenses are gorgeous, but they're not in my top 3. However, I do love them because I'm filming this camera with the 50 and this camera with the 85. So I do have them in my arsenal, but we're narrowing down the top 3. If you packed your wedding photography bag with just these 3 lenses, you would be well covered. In fact, I've definitely photographed weddings with only these 3 lenses. So let's get into them. Let's go in order of focal length. So the very first lens that I have here is the Canon RF 135mm f1.8 LIS USM lens. This lens is one of my absolute favorites. Back when we had EF lenses on our DSLR cameras, this EF version of the lens was also my favorite. I would always call it like the secret lens because it's not one that you would immediately think of when you go purchase a lens for wedding photography. But here's why I absolutely love it. This 135mm lens is enough reach to photograph during a wedding ceremony. It's also really beautiful for blurring the backgrounds, especially since we can open up to f1.8. Now, the magic of this Canon RF 135mm lens is when it's paired with the Canon EOS R5 Mark II or the original R5 because they're both 45 megapixel cameras. And when I use this lens on that camera, I'll internally crop to the 1.6 aspect ratio, effectively making this lens digitally cropped to a 212mm lens at f1.8. Now for me, that's perfect because that actually exceeds that 70-200, but I have it at 1.8 and it's much lighter than the 70-200 2.8 lens, right? Do you agree? As you can see from the photos that we're displaying here, this is a beautiful lens that gives you such nice, crisp imagery, really popping out your subject from the background so that the background becomes less distracting. It's my go-to for wedding ceremonies, for portraits, and when I want to get a little bit close up without disturbing like that natural moment that's happening at a wedding day. It's really great for those photojournalistic moments where you're trying to like pop into a moment and capture it without disturbing it. The second lens should come at no surprise if you've ever followed me and heard me talk about lenses. This lens is the Canon. It's the beast of a lens, if I may say. This is the Canon RF 28-70 f2L USM lens, and this is my go-to. You cannot pry this lens from me. This lens is an absolute workhorse. Because it's a 28-70 range, I am able to zoom in and out, getting wide, medium, and closer photographs, enabling me to photograph and capture a lot more in a shorter amount of time, which is key for weddings because you don't always get the time that you need. But because this lens is an f2 aperture instead of the 24-70 f2.8 or the 24-105 f2.8, it still gives that prime look and that really like whimsical, dreamy vibe. Even if, you know, maybe light and airy isn't your style and you like more of a dark and moody, it's still gonna really help you accentuate your subject, pulling them from any distractions of the background. Now, I can't say enough about this lens. Again, especially when I'm pairing it with a camera like the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, or even the R6 Mark III, which I'm currently recording this video in open gate with. I love pairing it with those two because I can do that 1.6 crop and really zoom in. it just allows me to not change lenses as much as I used to when I was photographing with just prime lenses. And trust me, I used to be like nothing but a prime girl. That's the only thing I ever wanted to photograph with. And now this lens has completely changed me. Do I actually enjoy the look of primes better? Yes, I do. I really do. But when I'm photographing for a client, a wedding photography client, and I know those little moments matter, and when I'm switching lenses, I could potentially miss something, or even if I'm photographing with two cameras and I'm putting one down and reaching for the other, those are moments that are potentially missed, that are no longer missed when all you have to do is zoom out or in. So that's why this particular lens is in my arsenal. And I will say this, if I had to narrow it down to two, it would be these two right here. Now, this third lens comes with a caveat because I am actually looking at a kind of upgrading, switching, alternating with a new lens that I haven't purchased yet. So keep that in mind while I tell you about this lens. So this third lens that I love bringing with me on weddings is the Canon RF 15 to 35 millimeter f2.8 LIS USM lens. Now this lens, as opposed to the 28 to 70, also has image stabilization in it, which is like kind of a nice thing, but honestly the wide stuff, like you don't really, in my opinion, need the image stabilization, especially since you're pairing it with a camera that has image stabilization with it, most likely. So it's nice that it has the image stabilization on the 135 millimeter lens, but it's kind of just a, okay, that's cool in the 15 to 35. So I know in your head, it's like, oh, okay, image stabilization, like it might be cool, but where would you actually use that, being that you don't usually see a lot of camera shake in a wider focal length? Well, let me tell you about how I use this at weddings. One of my favorite photographs to get at a wedding reception is a really wide shot where I have a slow shutter speed, because then I can get the grandiose view of everything, have a really sharp chandelier or curtain, and then have a blurry dance floor showing all the movement and the action. I'll do this sometimes with tables while people are eating dinner, so I can just photograph maybe, you know, that little bit of movement as people are eating and talking and laughing. But then because of the image stabilization in here, especially when comboed with one of the Canon mirrorless cameras that have image stabilization, the two of them combined are giving me the ability to go down to, I mean, I go down to 1 or 2 seconds sometimes, and I can have a perfectly crisp atmosphere. And then it also lets me to close down to f22, which lets me starburst all of the lights in the room. So that's one of the main reasons why I love the image stabilization in this lens for weddings. Now, I also use this for the dance floor, because getting up wide, getting close, personal, a little bit more of a wide focal length, it just makes those dancing images so much fun. And not for nothing, this is a little bit lighter. So by the time I've been carrying around the 28 to 70 on my camera for the majority of the wedding day, it is nice to switch to the lighter 15 to 35. Now, I know this is about my 3 favorite lenses, and that's absolutely true that these are my 3 faves for wedding photography. Now, this lens I am currently in the process of having an alternate for. Not that there's anything wrong with this lens, I love it, but I recently borrowed this lens on a shoot in Mont Saint-Michel, France. And oh my goodness, thank God I had it, because there were some tight spots that I got into where if I didn't have that 10 millimeter focal length, I would not have gotten all the atmosphere and the architecture that I wanted. So the lens that I am going to alternate this with, depending on where I'm going, is the Canon RF 10 to 20 f4 lens. So I have no problem going to f22. And again, when you're wider, you don't really notice camera shake anyway. But that lens is such a beauty, and it's even smaller. Now, you might be thinking 10, oh my gosh, it's gonna look like one of those fish eyes and really gross. That lens is magic because it doesn't distort as much as you think it would. And then of course you can correct more if you want to in post. But I just thought if I was making a video about my top 3 lenses, I should tell you about the one that I'm about to bring into my arsenal, having borrowed it before, and now I'm going to purchase it. So that one will replace this 15 to 35 millimeter on some jobs, not all, just the ones I know where I'm gonna want that little bit of extra space. So that's it. That's what I have for you, my top 3 lenses as a wedding photographer. Tell me down in the comments which ones you would bring if you only had 3 lenses for your own wedding photography bag. My name is Vanessa Joy. I'm a Canon Explorer of Light. Make sure you hit like, subscribe here on Canon's YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time.